Hello, my name is Varuna Singh, and I'm a business management specialist with the GSA Center for Charge Card Management. Today I'm going to be presenting GSA SmartPay Purchase Management Essentials. I want to thank you for joining me today. This course is a basic introduction to the purchase business line of the GSA SmartPay program. Learning objectives. Here are a few learning objectives that are going to be covered in today's session. By the time we're done, you should be able to list benefits of the GSA SmartPay program, list the GSA SmartPay 3 purchase business line products and services, apply the micro purchase thresholds correctly, apply the purchase card to purchases, orders, and payments, understand purchase card program rules, understand roles and responsibilities, know how to apply fraud and preventative measures, and learn how to locate resources. Benefits, GSA SmartPay benefits. This program was established in 1998 and is the largest government commercial payment solutions program. GSA SmartPay provides services to more than 560 federal organizations. Prior to GSA SmartPay, the federal government used paper-based purchase orders for small dollar purchases under the micro-purchase threshold. The GSA SmartPay purchase card is one of 4 business line offerings under the GSA SmartPay 3 contracts, including travel, integrated, and fleet being the others. There are benefits to using the GSA SmartPay purchase card. These can include safety and transparency, which help improve financial controls and tools to access the spend data for increased transparency. Some safety features include EMV in order to make your card secure. We've got the EAS system that allows for electronic access to data through data mining tools. We have refunds. Under GSA SmartPay 3, the refund calculations for spend and speed of pay are combined into a single refund rate, and this includes both volume and speed of pay. Cost savings. The estimated administrative savings for the purchase card alone is $1.7 billion a year, basically $70 per transaction, when used in place of a written purchase order. Purchase card is integrated with GSA Advantage. All GSA scheduled contracts, including contract terms that are on the card, can be used as an ordering and payment mechanism under the micro purchase threshold, and it can be used for contracts over the micro purchase threshold. Automatic point of sale discount, recognizing from the Federal Strategic Sourcing Initiative, FSI, vendors such as those that offer office supplies. Also, it's best-in-class solution as designated by the Office of Management and Budget. Fiscal year 21 purchase spend. Fiscal year 21 purchase spend totaled $21.9 billion, which was about 75% of the total overall GSA SmartPay program spend. The graph on the left of the screen shows the trend for purchase card spend from month to month for fiscal year 21. The table on the top right shows there was a slight decrease in spend from fiscal year 20 to fiscal year 21 of 0.4%, and the number of purchase transactions also decreased by 4%. The table at the bottom right shows the top 5 agencies by spend under the GSA SmartPay 3 purchase program for FY21. These include the Veterans Affairs, Department of Defense, United States Post Service, Department of Homeland Security, and Department of Justice. GSA SmartPay 3 purchase business line Tier 1, which are mandatory products and services. So all of the business lines under SmartPay 3 contract include the Tier 1 products and services are shown in the left-hand column. The ones that are specific to the purchase business line are shown in the right-hand column. These include convenience checks, declining balance cards, foreign currency cards. Tier 1 products and services are available at no cost to your agency simply by using the GSA SmartPay purchase card. The only exceptions are 2 items shown in italics: the non-interchange based government-to-government transactions, and convenience checks. These do come at a fee to the government. The products and services available to your agency under GSA SmartPay 3 will be communicated by your Level 1 AOPC program coordinator. Fees for the two CLINs annotated here are established in your specific agency task order, referencing the government-to-government and the convenience checks. As the industry evolves, so does the program, and so do the products and services offered. GSA SmartPay 3 Purchase Business Line Tier 2. These are the optional products and services. So all the business lines under the GSA SmartPay 3 contract include the parent categories of Tier 2 products and services shown in the left-hand column. However, since Tier 2 products and services are optional, they may or may not be included in each bank's master contract, and they'll vary from bank to bank. Banks have the option to offer specific proprietary payment solutions and other services under the Tier 2 categories. There are some products and services under these categories that are specific to the business line, optional ATM access, shown in the right-hand column. These products and services are typically enhancements to the purchase card program that agencies may choose to order either at the AOPC level or at the cardholder level. Tier 2 products and services also typically come at a cost to your agency. If you have a question about what products or services were included in your agency's task order, please contact your agency program coordinator. What is a micropurchase? The Federal Acquisition Regulation, which I'll also refer to as the FAR, states that the government-wide commercial purchase card shall be the preferred method to purchase and pay for micropurchases. That simple guidance can get a little more complicated when we break it apart. What exactly falls under a micropurchase? Let's start with, well, what is a micropurchase? A micropurchase is defined by the FAR as an acquisition of supplies or services, the aggregate amount of which does not exceed the micropurchase threshold, or what I might refer to as the MPT. Evolution of the micropurchase threshold. If you've been following changes to the micropurchase threshold in the FAR and in other legislation, you know that this threshold has changed a lot over the past years. Going back to the beginning, the Federal Acquisition Streamlining Act established the category of micropurchases and the initial $2,500 micropurchase threshold. 6 years later, in fiscal year 2010, the micropurchase threshold was raised from $2,500 to $3,000. And again, 5 years later, it was raised from $3,000 to $3,500. These increases were part of the FAR Council's review of all acquisition thresholds done every 5 years to consider adjustments for inflation. The FY 2018 NDAA Section 806 included an increase of the micropurchase threshold for civilian agencies from $3,500 to then $10,000. The FY 19 Section 821 Act was signed into law on August 13, 2018. It doubled the DoD threshold to $10,000 on par with civilian agencies. Related to the e-commerce portal, the Commercial Platforms Initiative is one of 4 cornerstone projects under the Federal Marketplace Strategy to modernize and simplify the buying and selling experience for customers, suppliers, and acquisition professionals. Micropurchase threshold exception for construction. Construction is defined as construction, alteration, repair of buildings, structures, or other real property, and it includes improvements of all types. Examples of construction include building a structure, repairing a hole in a parking lot, replacing a window, etc. Some tasks which appear to be services are actually construction, depending on the volume or work being performed. The micro purchase threshold for construction is $2,000. If over the $2,000 threshold, several acts can kick in, which require specific contract clauses, terms, and conditions. Any construction activities totaling over $2,000 in aggregate costs must be referred to your procurement office for purchase. Micro purchase threshold exception for services. Services is defined as directly engaging the time and effort of a contractor whose primary purpose is to perform a task rather than furnish a supply item. A service contract may be either a non-personal or personal contract. It can also cover services performed by either professional or non-professional personnel, whether an individual organization or an organizational basis. The table here shows the difference between the types of services. The micro purchase threshold for services is $2,500. Professional services are where preponderance of the work is performed by a profession recognized as such based on prolonged course of study. The micro purchase threshold for professional services is $10,000. Micro purchase threshold for supplies. Supplies are defined as property except land or interest in land. Supplies are tangible items that are required for official government use. As you see, we have some icons that show example of supplies. The micro purchase threshold for the purchase of supplies is $10,000. Ordering activities are not required to solicit from a specific number of scheduled contractors, but should attempt to distribute orders among qualified contractors. For example, 3 scheduled contractors in your immediate area can make signage for your base. Your last order went to ABC Signs, so maybe your next order should go to one of the other 2 remaining vendors who can meet your needs. Depending on the type and value of the property purchased, your purchase may be considered government property and subject to government property control requirements. Cardholders should be aware of these control requirements for their agency, and they should purchase these types of property in a proper way. Micro purchase threshold exception for contingency operations. So in fiscal year 1998, the Stafford Act provided for an increased micro purchase threshold for use under contingency operations. This includes the acquisition of supply or services that, as determined by the head of the agency, are used to support a contingency operation to facilitate defense against any type of emergency or major disaster. So the micro purchase thresholds for civilian and military agencies: $20,000 in case of a contract to be awarded within the United States, and $30,000 in the case of a contract to be awarded outside of the United States. Purchases using this authority must have a clear and direct relationship to the support of this contingency operation. Typically, the head of an agency will define an operation in writing and provide the parameters for the use of the purchase card. International disasters assistance is at the request of the Secretary of State or the administrator of the United States Agency for International Development, which USAID. A major disaster is defined by any natural catastrophe which is determined by the president, and it can cause damage in sufficient severity and magnitude to warrant major disaster assistance under the Stafford Act. Methods of use in the FAR. The purchase card can be used in 3 ways, depending on the value of the transaction and the authority of the cardholder. Procurement mechanism. The card is used as the procurement tool to acquire and pay for goods and services by means other than use of an existing contract. As an ordering mechanism, the card can be used to order and pay for goods and services under existing contract, and as a payment mechanism, it can be used only to pay for goods and services acquired by other means. Uses under and over the micropurchase threshold. At or below the micropurchase thresholds for supplies, services, and construction, cardholders may use their cards as procurement, ordering, and payment mechanisms within their single and monthly transaction limits. For those actions valued over the micropurchase threshold for supplies, services, and construction, only cardholders who are warranted contracting officers or appointed as ordering officers or payment officials may use their card. They may place task or delivery orders against existing contracts if use of the purchase card as a purchase mechanism is authorized in the basic contract terms, or as an ordering mechanism, or to make payments on purchase orders, task delivery orders, contracts where the card is an accepted form of payment as a payment mechanism. Contracting officers must comply with all federal procurement policies when using the card. Cardholders who are also contracting officers or ordering officers are not exempt from normal procurement processes simply because they hold the purchase card. This includes the need to issue a written formal purchase order, requirements for publicizing purchases, acquisition planning, and complying with all policies. There are some agencies that might have individuals that hold payment cards for the sole purpose of making payments under established contracts. The dollar values for those persons should be delegated by the contracting officer or maybe the chief financial officer, and the single purchase limit for those cardholders may be higher than the typical cardholder. Micropurchase myth busting. Let's bust a few myths about micropurchases. Do not pay list applicability. The do not pay list is a list of entities who should not be paid, and it is maintained by the Bureau of Services. This assists agencies in prevention of improper payment, fraud, waste, and abuse. Systems for award management applicability. In accordance with the FAR, contractors from which purchases are made under the micropurchase threshold that use a purchase card as both the procurement and payment mechanism are exempt from the requirement to be registered in the system for award management. Corporations regarding delinquent tax liability or felony conviction. FAR has a provision that requires offerors to certify that they are a corporation that does not have a delinquent tax liability or felony conviction. Since the micropurchases do not use any formal solicitation procedure for procurement on the open market, it is not applicable to micropurchases. Written quotes. There is no requirement to obtain a written quote for micropurchases. It should be as simple as calling a vendor, explaining what you need, and asking for a price over the phone. Competition. Competition requirements tell us that the competition does not apply to the acquisition of products and services under the micropurchase threshold. However, cardholders should always rotate orders with vendors who can provide the products or services within the time frame required. Required sources. When trying to determine a source for the purchase, many considerations must be made. The FAR outlines mandatory sources for supplies and services in their descending order of priority, which are listed here on the table. This is what's sometimes called the order of priority and should be used unless otherwise provided by law or head of contracting activity. For supplies, for example, if you're asked to purchase an executive desk chair, what steps do you take to determine which source you should purchase the chair from? First, you'd look at the existing inventory to see if there's a chair that can meet your needs. If there isn't a chair available, then look to excess inventories or maybe other agencies to see if there is a suitable chair that would meet your needs. If a chair is not found, then look to Unicor to meet your needs. And if Unicor cannot meet your needs, then check the government's procurement list managed by Ability One for products from participating nonprofit agencies. If it's still not being able to be found, then look to purchase from wholesale supply sources such as GSA, DLA, or Virginia stock programs. And lastly, you may purchase from a commercial source only after all of these considerations have been made to the previous source. For services, similar steps are taken for services. There are a few things that are the exception, for example, utility services, printing services, leasing vehicles. When considering services to be performed by Unicor, do not disclose information considered classified or that might provide, information about maps, drawings, or the layout of government facilities. Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act. Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act requires that federal departments use information and communication technology that allows employees with disabilities to have access to and use of information and data that is comparable to the access to and use of information by other employees. Section 508 also requires that individuals with disabilities have access to and use of information and data. When making a micro purchase of information and communication technology, make sure that the available accessibility information applies to the versions of the products to be purchased. The Buy Accessible Wizard is a web-based application, and this can make it easier to buy these types of products and services and thus comply with federal requirements for Section 508. Sustainability and environmental considerations. Agencies must also consider sustainable and environmentally friendly products and services at the micro purchase level. Executive Order 13693 requires agencies to purchase products and services that meet the statutory requirements for recycled content, energy and water efficient products, bio-based products, anything identified by EPA programs. In addition, agencies must purchase environmentally sustainable electronic products. The Resource Conservation and Recovery Act requires the purchase of EPA-designated recycled content. The EPA maintains a list of designated recycled content products and recommends the percentage of recycled content that the products must contain. Agencies can refer to the Green Procurement Compilation for a complete list of designated products. How convenient are convenient checks? Convenience checks are a payment tool intended only when merchants do not accept the GSA SmartPay purchase card. They should be used as a last resort. Convenience checks do not offer the same kind of consumer protections that other GSA SmartPay solutions do. If your agency determines a need for convenience checks, your contractor bank will provide a supply of paper checks to the designated account. These checks will be processed as they are presented for payment. Due to the increased potential for fraud and abuse, specialized training on convenience checks is required prior to being authorized to write checks. Convenience checks may not be written for purchases above the micro purchase threshold. And in DoD, the limit is actually lower at $5,000 or half the cardholder's single purchase limit, unless this is a warranted contracting officer. You should not use convenience checks to pay for modifications to work or under any type of method of acquisition. You should not reimburse an employee, not used for cash advances, and not used for travel-related transportation tickets. The AOPC is responsible for the implementation of the appropriate internal controls and oversight of convenience check activity. Recurring payments. The general rule of thumb is that when you have recurring payments, you may use the purchase card to make those payments if the aggregate total of the payments over a 12-month period does not exceed the single transaction limit of the cardholder. That's a little bit of a tongue twister, so we'll get into an example. So again, payment officials who are delegated higher authority for payment purposes will be subject to the policies of the agency. So let's discuss an example. We've got Alice P. cardholder. She has a single transaction limit of $10,000. Alice is asked to make 15 equal monthly payments totaling $12,000 on an order. Can Alice make the recurring payments using her purchase card? Yes. Dividing $12,000 by 15 months, we get a monthly payment amount of $800. If you take $800 and multiply it by 12, we're at $9,600, which is less than the single transaction limit of $10,000. So, in fact, Alice can make payments with her purchase card. Do not split payments to a single vendor between cardholders in order to circumvent the 12-month recurring payment guidance. And then on that note, what is a split purchase? Splitting purchases is a prohibited practice with the card. What is considered splitting a purchase? Splitting a purchase is breaking a single transaction down to two or more smaller transactions to circumvent the cardholder's single transaction limit or to stay under the micropurchase threshold. Cardholders and approving officials that participate in split purchases may have their cards revoked and may even face disciplinary action. So it's not worth it. The slide outlines an example of a split purchase. You've got Peggy C. cardholder has a single transaction limit of $10,000. She needs to purchase a flatbed trailer for a strategic customer with a delivery required within 48 hours. The total cost is $12,000. Peggy calls the vendor, trailers are us. They've got a trailer in stock and they can deliver it tomorrow. So Peggy is crunched for time. She asks the vendor to charge her card for no more than $10,000 today and then $2,000 tomorrow in order to complete the purchase. Is this a split purchase? Yes, this is considered a split purchase, and this is not allowed. Tax exemption. States have the sovereign right to assess taxes on the purchases of goods and services, but they do not have the authority to assess taxes for purchases made directly by the federal government. Merchants and vendors act as the tax collection point, and as such, they determine when to assess tax and when not to. However, given this information, GSA does not have the authority to mandate tax exemption status for federal government transactions. All purchase card accounts fall into the category of centrally billed accounts, and the agency gets billed directly for the payments. As such, transactions under the purchase card are exempt from sales tax in all 50 states and U.S. territories. There are 13 states that are still required to have a form completed for such exemptions. They're listed on the slide. Vendors are expected to collect tax in accordance with established state laws and regulations. Merchants and vendors may choose to err on the side of caution and assess taxes. When a merchant is in doubt, cardholders are encouraged to ask merchants to contact the applicable state taxation authority for clarification prior to completing the purchase. Surcharges. A surcharge may be assessed on purchase depending on the vendor. A surcharge is a fee that is added to the cost of the purchase. Not all vendors will impose a surcharge. There are several states that do not allow or they limit the surcharges. Visa and MasterCard have strict guidelines, and they generally are capped at 4% of the cost of the transaction. Some states might have additional caps and guidelines. For a comprehensive list of tax information, please visit the GSA SmartPay Bulletin. And you can also go to our website, smartpay.gsa.gov. Also, my colleague Andrew Lee does present on taxes. So if you get a chance, take his course. Third-party payment processors. The Smart Bulletin 23 covers use of third-party payment processors when making purchases with the purchase card. Third-party payment processors are non-bank entities that provide payment processing services to merchants. These include entities like Amazon Pay, Apple Pay, PayPal, Venmo, etc., etc. It is not uncommon for merchants, particularly small merchants, to utilize third-party payment processors for their banking and payments. For many merchants, these processors are quickly becoming their only method of conducting the financial portion of their business, and they're now being widely used. There are several agencies that have developed internal policies ranging from completely restricting the use of third-party payment processors, or maybe having some less restrictive guidelines which still allow for transactions and include workarounds to be identified. I mentioned the SmartPay Bulletin 23. We released this in August 2018, and it states that agencies may consider this processor tool as long as it's within a merchant that's, doesn't seem too unusual or unknown. We also recommend that cardholders should not establish accounts in order to agree to commercial terms and conditions of the third-party payment processor without consent from legal counsel or proper authority. Keep in mind, when a third-party payment service is used, the cardholder can forfeit the dispute rights that get guaranteed under GSA SmartPay 3 contracts. Roles and responsibilities. We have different players in the program. We have the AOPC, the approving officials, and the cardholders, and everyone has a different role and responsibility. AOPC, Agency Organization Program Coordinator, plays a key role in the management and success of the purchase card program at the agency level. The AOPC is responsible as the focal point for answering questions related to the program, and they coordinate the intake of charge card applications, and the issuance of cards, destruction of cards. They review reports on a regular basis, and they monitor for misuse, fraud, and abuse. Also, an AOPC can arrange for proper training on the card. Approving officials. An approving official also plays a key role in preventing fraud, use, and abuse. They ensure approval of all purchases such that they are necessary and for official use, and they assist cardholders in the resolution of questionable charges, certifying invoices, and conducting informal compliance reviews. Account holders are the first line of defense when it comes to proper use of the card. Account holders have a specific set of responsibilities that should be followed: securing their cards, maintaining records of transactions, using the account for only government purchases, understanding policies, immediately reporting a stolen card, performing timely reconciliation, disputing transactions timely, and only using the card for expenses that fall within the purchase card solution. You're not supposed to use your purchase card if you're using it for a travel solution or for a fleet purchase. I am a card holder, an account card holder, and I've adhered to all of these guidance. I've even had my card, I had to have it reissued because it was compromised. Performing reconciliation, I make sure that I reach out to my approving official and always confirm what purchases were made and that they were appropriate charges. So it is a critical role, and it is not worth misusing the privilege. Disputing transactions. Of primary importance is the need to understand that the government has the right to dispute transactions. There are a number of various reasons for disputing transactions. In most cases, the account holder should contact the merchant directly to resolve any dispute charges and ask for credit. Sales tax and shipping charges are not disputable items and must be resolved between the account holder and the merchant. All disputes must be reported to the bank within 90 days from the date the transaction is processed. The bank will suspend the disputed charge and immediately provide a temporary credit to the account, and then investigate the disputed charge by contacting the merchant and requesting a response. If the merchant does not respond within 45 days, the disputed charge will be resolved in the favor of the account holder, and the merchant will be charged back for the particular goods or services. If the disputed charge is resolved in favor of the merchant, a letter will be sent to the account holder explaining that the charge will appear on their next billing statement. Merchants with a high number of disputes should be watched to determine if they are acting improperly. Categories of misuse and fraud. One of the roles of all three key players in the purchase card program is to avoid misuse by the cardholder and identify fraud. There are three categories of fraud related to the purchase card. Cardholder misuse and fraud. This is when fraud is committed by the cardholder themselves. Misuse includes exceeding purchase limits, making purchases for personal reasons. Most of the time it's intentional. It can be unintentional, but that would be considered misuse. I reiterate, it's not worth misusing your card. That's why I like to keep my card in a secure drawer in my house so that I don't have it in my wallet and it can't get misused. Non-cardholder fraud can be when a third party obtains the account information and uses it to make a purchase with a counterfeit charge card. Or the card is part of like an account takeover, identity theft. Sometimes the card was never received, and then the wrong person used the card because they got a hold of it. This must be reported immediately. And then we've got merchant fraud. Merchant fraud involves fraud committed by the merchant, either with or without knowledge of the cardholder, such as false charges and transactions. The merchant can charge for something that the cardholder never received. Mischarges, charging a different amount than what they should have been charging. Bribes and gratuities. Sometimes a merchant can offer a bribe or gratuity to the cardholder in order to engage in fraudulent activity. Keep in mind, approving officials, AOPCs, and cardholders can all be found guilty of fraud if they participate in any of these activities. What would you do? Jack P. Cardholder uses his GSA SmartPay purchase card to make an official purchase of $1,000 from Easy Gates to fix the back fence at the government compound. A few days later, Jack brags to coworkers that his brother, who owns Easy Gates, did a great job fixing the fence. Jack points to a new picnic table on the ground and says he also purchased these from Easy Gates. One of Jack's coworkers brings this information to your attention. What should you do? Well, the first thing you should do is just collect information, talk to Jack, and get the facts surrounding the decision to use Easy Gates. Did he get other quotes? Things could have been completed above the board. What if his location is remote and the only vendor can fix the fence within 50 miles is his brother's business? Is the purchase acceptable? If you have any questions about the validity of the transaction, you may need to notify the approving official and supervisor. You may want to also consider suspending the cardholder using their card temporarily if an investigation is ongoing. So you may be required to report questionable activity to another agency official, or maybe even the IG, just depending on the policy for your purchase program. Also, HR should be warned and contacted when fraudulent activity is discovered. What if this was just simply a solution where Jack should have known better, such as creating an appearance of conflict of interest by purchasing these services and products from his brother's company? This scenario is a good reminder why regularly scheduled trainer refreshing every 1 to 3 years is a useful tool. It reminds cardholders of the rules in general and those specific to your agency. If you suspend or deactivate a card, you may want to require the cardholder complete refresher training before reactivating. And you might want to require refresher training for any employee who breaks agency rules as repeat offenders. Preventative measures. There are several steps that can be taken in the management of the purchase card program in order to mitigate misuse and fraud. Some of these are listed here. Program evaluations. An AOPC can perform an evaluation of local operating procedures and do an analysis. A best practice would be to use a standardized form to provide information to an AOPC on questionable transactions. Separation of duties, making sure that the duties of cardholders, approving officials, and AOPCs do not overlap. Best practice, when appointing AOPCs or approving officials, consider factors such as grade level, position, training, span of control, etc. Random record reviews. An AO or cardholder should be able to provide documentation of purchases, written authority, invoices, etc., email approvals, and they should be kept and monitored and reviewed. Reports. There are a variety of reports that can be used to review transaction history. Best practice would be placing ad hoc reports in a shared folder for all AOPs to access them. Help develop consistent use of data across the organization. Talk to each other and make sure that the reports are being utilized in order to prevent any type of fraud or misuse. Credit limits. Limits can be set and there can be restrictions on spend. For example, daily, weekly, monthly. The AOPC, sets the credit limits depending on what the need is. Remember, you can always raise your limit at any time in response to an emergency, and then also you can lower them. Record keeping requirements. Finally, we have a list here of records that AOPCs should become familiar with. The following references are related to record retention and their purchase card program. Records should include all transaction-related documentation. The GSA SmartPay 3 Master Contract states, in addition to record retention requirements of the FAR, the contractor shall serve as the document repository agent for all GSA SmartPay transactions. The contractor shall maintain electronic records of all transactions for a period of 6 years after the final contract payment. Final payment is defined as the final payment of the particular charge under each agency's task order. All the key players in the purchase card program should understand the importance for supporting documentation of all transactions and requirements for transactions for record purposes as it relates to using the card. GSA SmartPay online training. The Center for Charge Card Management offers a free online purchase card training for cardholders and AOPCs at the website shown on the slide. The new Program Coordinator tab is where AOPCs can find all the resources they need to manage their program. If you click on Purchase from the drop-down menu, you can get information specific for the purchase card business line. The Account Holders and Approving Officials tab has a similar drop-down menu and provides purchase-specific information for their uses as well. Directly above Program Coordinators, you see Visit Online Training. In the GSA SmartPay training portals, cardholders can set up profiles, register for training, and manage online training courses and certificates. AOPCs can leverage this training as part of their required agency refresher training. And the Level 1 AOPCs can pull reports for employees who have completed training and maintain their records. Learning objectives. Success. Here's a quick recap of the learning objectives. Listing GSA SmartPay 3 purchase line business products, services, applying micro purchase thresholds correctly, applying micro purchase cards to orders and payments and purchases, understanding the purchase card program roles, understanding roles and responsibilities, applying fraud and preventative measures, locating resources for program coordinators. Got questions? After this forum, if you have any questions about this presentation or others you see this week, please feel free to contact the GSA SmartPay Support Center. You can email gsa_smartpay@gsa.gov. Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we are closed on federal holidays. Now, please continue to wait online, and we'll start a live Q&A via chat, and we can answer any of your immediate questions. I just want to thank you for taking this course. I hope it was informative. If you are a new AOPC, hopefully you got some tips on how to run your card program, or hopefully this is a refresher for someone who may have been with us for a few years already. Again, thank you and enjoy the rest of the session. I will now be available to answer your questions live.